Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, we're going to use the shape of a triangle in our slow stitching pieces. Now, shapes go beautifully with slow stitching. You can repeat them, you can make them any size you want. In the case of triangles, you can make them long and tall or short and squat. In the past, I've used squares and lots of circles in my work, and the triangle kind of gets overlooked, but it is a simple, basic shape. It's kind of sturdy with the flat base as well. Today's class, we're going to use scraps of fabric and stitches to create an interesting piece. Now, the beauty of it is to use your own scraps of fabric in whatever patterns and colors you have to make it really your own. And the same thing goes with the shape and the scale of the triangles. So let's jump right in and get started. So I have my tag here made out of denim, just a cut up piece of denim fabric, and then I wanted to use this fabric. It's just a little scrap that I had, but I just love the colors, particularly the combination of the teal with the green and the coral over here. I thought it was quite beautiful. So I'm just going to use a combination of 3. You can use any number you want. Odd numbers tend to be a little easier. And I like to start with my fabric collage. Now I'm just using one pattern of fabric, one swatch, but you can combine different fabric pieces if you want. So the first thing I want to do is just cut out various triangles, and I don't mind making them really large because I can always cut them down from there. So that's one triangle. Because of all the different colors in this swatch, I can really play around trying to get the colors that I want to use. So I have my 3 triangles cut out. Now I'll just work on placing them. I can use the entire fabric or just however I want. And I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. Just the scale is a little much for me. And the same thing here. I think I'll trim this down a little bit. So I have a little bit of variation. I like that. Turn this on its side. So the first thing I want to do now is tack this down. I have my embroidery floss, and I chose a color that was reminiscent of this background piece, and this happened to be this DMC 964. I separated it, so I only have 2 strands instead of the 6 strands that come on the thread. And I have a video of how to easily separate the strands. So now I just want to tack it down along each of these triangles. I can pin them in place, but I'm not terribly worried about their placement. Start with this one. I'm just going to go around the edge making little stitches just around the outline. You can use any type of stitch you want, make them as large as you want, and you can even make them a decorative element. So I'll stitch all of them down and then show you how they look, and then we can start the next step, which will be embellishing with additional triangles. So I stitched this down using a simple running stitch, but depending on the stitches that you choose and the fabric or multiple fabrics that you use, you can get a very interesting result. So now the next stage is to incorporate even more triangles. You can fill them in with a satin stitch, but I like to use just the outline. I have these filled in from the fabric, and I think it's interesting to add the different texture of the open shape. So I want to add, again, an even number. Because this is a small piece, I'm going to stick to 3. So I'm just going to kind of roughly sketch my triangle. And it doesn't really show up here on this fabric, so I'll get a white pencil. Just make a light sketch, just so that I can see it. So that's one triangle. And I like them to go over the fabric that's here. I'll do another one, very long triangle, and then one on this side. And over here, I'll just fill this in so I know where I want to go. And now I'll take my embroidery floss. I'm using all 6 strands because I want that thickness. I have 2 colors. I have this beautiful green. It's a 3347. And I'll make a few of the triangles with this. And then I found this in my scrap bin for my embroidery floss, and it just happens to match beautifully. So I want to use this color as well. I think I'm just going to use this color, however, on this triangle. So I'm just going to create a split stitch. It's a very simple stitch. You just come up
and make the stitch whatever length you want. And because this is a straight line, I can make my stitches a little larger than normal. And I'd make them smaller if they were on a curve. And then I just split the stitch and I come up through there and make the next stitch. And I do the same thing all the way around all three sides of that triangle. I come up splitting the stitch, come down. As you can see, it's making a nice, almost braided look of a stitch. And I'll just continue this right to where I want it to end. So that looks really nice. It's very interesting and it has some texture. I'll continue this all the way around, and then I'll add the green triangles using that same technique and that same stitch and show you the result. Now to join my lines on the triangle, I come up for the stitch and bring it down right on that angle. And then I start my split stitch again by coming up through the stitch and continuing on until I get to the end of this line. And I'll do that on all three of those triangles. So I finished with the stitches. I have the interesting open triangles. I have the fabric triangles, and you can continue this further. You can add additional stitches of any particular stitch, or you can continue with more triangles. It's just a very interesting look. I wanted to show you a variation, same technique. I just incorporated different colors. So I have my fabric triangles, my open triangles, and then I threw in some yellow triangles. This little rickrack was attached to this little piece of quilting that I salvaged. And that's the back of it. And the piece we did today in the back there with the stitching.
So that's how I bring triangles to my slow stitching pieces. It's a simple technique, it's very fun, and it's an often overlooked shape. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for joining me today.